Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name's Tom
Hey,
Coleos.
hey, Tom.
Yeah.
Hold off. There's only 13 people have joined so far.
Oh, okay. We gotta wait. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, it finally works. Sorry, I'm 2 minutes late.
No worries. Thank you.
And there is no video options, right? It's only audio.
Correct. We'll put up the PowerPoint slide that you created and run through it for you. Good morning, folks. We're going to give another minute or so for attendees to continue to join the meeting, and then we'll get started. Mark, do you think we should get started now? It's about 4 after.
Yep. It's slowed down. I think we can get started.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tom Coleos. I am the Water Supply Planning Section Lead at the district, and I'll be the moderator for today's workshop. This is the first of 2 workshops we are hosting for the draft 2021 Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan. Our next workshop will be held at the end of August. There also will be a technical methods workshop at the end of June to describe the East Coast Floridan model and summarize the results of the updated simulations of the existing and future groundwater conditions with the estimated and projected demands contained in this plan update. The registration link for these meetings will be made available on the district's website under news and meetings and through email announcements. We currently have about 25 people that are attending today's workshop, over 50 registered. Hopefully a few more will join. The Zoom meeting is being recorded, and within a few days, the recording will be made available on the district's website. The presentations that you see here today have been posted to the district's Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan website if you want to view them again. We are all working in unprecedented times, so during the presentation and comments, you may hear background noises such as dogs barking. Thank you for your understanding and patience in advance. Next slide, please.
Working on it, Tom. Hold on. Bear with me here. There we go.
Under the Zoom format, all attendees are muted. However, we still want to hear from you. We will have a question and comment period after each speaker. so please hold your questions until the end of each presentation. Also, we will have a 10-minute break about halfway through the agenda. Your comments and thoughts are critical to ensure the 2021 update addresses your issues and concerns, so I encourage you to share those with us. Before we start, I'd like to introduce our speakers today who will be available to answer any specific questions after their presentations. Our speakers listed on the agenda are Mark Elsner, our Water Supply Bureau Chief, Nancy Demenstrani, our Upper East Coast Plan Manager, Lorenzo Rossi, Assistant Professor of Plant Root Biology at University of Florida, Nathan Kennedy, an economist with NES Consulting, Tony Edwards, a Senior Scientist in Coastal Ecosystems at the district, and Leslie Waugh, Section Administrator of Ecosystem Restoration, also at the district. I'd like to remind each of our panelists to remain on mute throughout the presentations. Upon completion of each presentation, I will have further instructions on providing comments and questions. With that, Mark, please proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tom. This is Mark Elsner. I'm the Bureau Chief of the Water Supply Bureau here at the South Florida Water Management District. And I do want to welcome you to the kickoff of the 2021 Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan update process. We're excited that you've joined us today. This isn't the first go around on the Upper East Coast. The first Upper East Coast plan was approved in 1998. And believe it or not, there's been 3 updates in 2004, 2011, and 2016. And we're not starting from scratch. We're going to be building on the work that has been previously done. And when I look at the participants, we do have several individuals that have worked on and been engaged in previous updates and development of the original plan. And I see Mr. Michael Minton is one of the attendees, and the first Upper East Coast plan in 1998 was done under his guidance as the South Florida Water Management District Governing Board member for this region. So we are looking forward to it. For this time around, the planning period is 2019 to 2045. And we'll get into it in a minute, but we update these every 5 years to stay current. Our plan is as good as the information that goes in it, and with changing times, 5 years seems to be a good time frame to update and capture the current information and plan for those needs. I think testament to that was the recession in the late 2000s, and being and that did result in adjustment to the numbers and water demands. So this will be the 4th update for this plan. As Tom indicated, our schedule calls for the plan to be completed and presented to our governing board for approval in November of 2021. Today we do have a lot of information to go over. So just be patient, write your questions down, because we do encourage comments and discussion to ensure the plan addresses your thoughts and concerns. And so please, the virtual format is different than being in person, but we do want to hear your comments and any concerns. And as Tom indicated, after each presentation, we will open it up for questions and comments. So please hold those until the end. And at the end of each presentation, go over the instructions on how to raise your hand and unmute yourself. So before jumping into the presentations, we're fortunate enough to have our current governing board member for that region, Ms. Jackie Thurlow-Lipich, participating today, and would like to ask her if she has any opening comments.
I do. Thank you so much. I'm Jackie Thurlow-Lipich, and I am your present governing board member. And I am an at-large East Coast governing board representative. I wanted to say hello to Mr. Michael Minton, who is someone I have great respect for and had the opportunity to serve on the Harbor Branch Foundation Board with and learn a lot from him. I wanted to start today and end today mostly for me right now with a quote that I chose to hopefully set the tone for the coming hours. The quote is by Theodore Roosevelt, and it reads, "The conservation of natural resources is the fundamental problem. Unless we solve that problem, it will avail us little to solve all others." I look forward to being part of solving our challenges today. Thank you very much.
Well said. That's a great quote. Okay. Bear with me here. I'm having trouble advancing the slides for some reason. There we go. All right. Before we get started into the Upper East Coast specifically, let's talk about a little background. In the South Florida Water Management District, we've divided the district into 5 planning areas as indicated on this map encompassing the district. These planning areas are pretty much drawn around drainage basins. So for the Upper East Coast planning area, it reflects the drainage basins of the C25, 24, 23, and C44 canals. And Nancy will go over the specific boundaries in a minute. As you know, notice Lake Okeechobee touches 4 of the planning areas, and we formally address that in the Lower East Coast Water Supply Plan. We stagger development of these plans. We complete 1 a year, primarily because we have the same staff working on each plan. So over the 5-year period, we'll have 1 update every year. And that works really well for consistency and coordination between the planning areas. The Upper East Coast is the first water supply plan the district's completing in this round. And like I said, our schedule is to complete that by November of this year. As I indicated, we update these every 5 years, and the planning horizon for this round is, for all the updates, is 2045. Yeah. And there is a local government connection with these plans. Local governments are required to update their water facilities element of their comprehensive plan within 18 months of approval of the water supply plan. And that provides consistency between the region and local planning, and that local government identifying the projects that will need to be completed to meet their needs over the next 10 years. Okay, so what's a water supply plan? Basically, or simply speaking, a water supply plan is a proactive approach towards water supply. We know there will be increased water needs in the future. So these water supply plans let us get ahead of those demands by identifying the sources and strategies now on how those demands will be met, while still meeting the needs of the natural resources. What the plan does is provides a roadmap to meet those future needs while protecting the water resources and natural systems. It's really important that this is a planning level approach. And as part of that, we project out future demands, as I indicated, through 2045 with this round. And then we identify and evaluate various water source options to meet those needs. What a plan is it doesn't authorize consumptive use permits. That's another level that is required to have the authority to withdraw specific quantities of water from specific sources. The plan doesn't establish MFLs. We will include those, and we will review the prevention and recovery strategy for those MFLs and update those if needed in this water supply plan. It doesn't adopt rules. Any specific recommendations would provide guidance for those to occur after the plan approval. And it doesn't require water users to implement specific projects. The plan will identify sources and projects that local users can choose from, but in the end, they could pick another project to meet their needs. And it doesn't address surface water quality issues. Okay. As I stated, the last plan was approved in 2016, but work hasn't stopped after that approval. There's been a tremendous amount of work that's happened since 2016, and I want to just take a brief minute to go over that. But prior to doing that, let's just review the 2016 water supply plan, some of the issues or considerations that were identified, the conclusions and future guidance. So for the water resource considerations for the 2016 plan, and these have been very similar for each of our plans. In most of the areas, the superficial aquifer system is limited, and primarily due to low aquifer productivity. There are concerns or limitations because of natural systems, and always a concern over saltwater intrusion. From a surface water standpoint, surface water availability is limited, and that most of the surface water in this area is covered by a restricted allocation rule that restricts additional development or additional allocation of water from those water bodies. Freshwater discharges are affecting the coastal resources, and many of us know the timing and volume of those discharges has impacted the quality of the St. Lucie River and the Indian River Lagoon, mainly because there's not very much storage in this area. So when it rains, there's considerable discharge from the land, and during the dry times, there's very little discharge. And another thing that has happened over time is the reliance has shifted from the superficial aquifer system to the Floridan aquifer system to meet our growing needs. And consideration is just ensuring the long-term availability of the Floridan aquifer system, for today, tomorrow, and future generations. The conclusion of the 2016 water supply plan was that future 2040 projected water needs of the region can be met with appropriate management, conservation, and implementation of projects. However, that wasn't going to happen on its own. There's still significant work that's needed to make that a reality. And a couple items that were identified was SERP implementation and other projects are necessary to meet the future needs. And one utility needed a water supply development project to be able to meet their 2040 demands. The plan did include future direction and implement measures for the successful long-term management of the Floridan aquifer system, especially for public water supply, including continuation of monitoring programs. We need to continue construction of SERP and other related projects. As our understanding of sea level rise and climate change increases, we need to identify potential impacts on water supply in the region. And moving forward, we could develop alternative water supplies, or the alternative and avoid having to develop large alternative water supply projects is increased water efficiency through promotion of water conservation. But where needed, promote continued diversification of water supply sources, including the use of reclaimed water. Another important part of this is the northern boundary is the St. Lucie County, Indian River County line, However, that's also the boundary between the South Florida Water Management District and the St. Johns River Water Management District. And as we know, our water resources do not stop at political boundaries. And in this case, it's critical that we do coordinate with them so that we're looking at the water resources holistically and account for water uses in Indian River County. All right, so getting into the progress since 2016, there have been significant initiatives that have been completed or underway in the Upper East Coast, and some of those are listed here. There's been major restoration and construction projects occurring, and in some cases nearing completion. We have the C-44 reservoir and STA construction, which Leslie Waugh will cover later on today. There's been progress made on the C-23 and 24 project with some design completed. The Lakeside Ranch STA phases 1 and 2 have been completed. And if you're not familiar with Lakeside Ranch, the Lakeside Ranch STA project is a key component of the Northern Everglades and Estuaries Protection Program. It's located in northwestern Martin County, and it consists of a stormwater treatment area, which includes canals, levees, treatment cells, central preserve area, and a southern preserve area on a 2,700 acre parcel of land adjacent to Lake Okeechobee. Phase 1 included the construction of STA North and began operation in 2013. Phase 2 consisted of an STA South that was completed in January of 2019. And the S191A pump station is expected to be completed in May of 2021. There's approximately 1,700 acres of wetlands that will treat stormwater runoff from Taylor Creek and Nubbin Slough basins to the north before that runoff enters Lake Okeechobee. Another major initiative is the Herbert Hoover Dike rehabilitation, and that has been going on for many years. And since this plan was developed, they found ways to accelerate the schedule and bumped it up by 3 years. And the Corps anticipates that the rehabilitation work will continue through 2022. From regulatory protection effort, there's an effort was initiated in late 2018, early 2019. The Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual, commonly referred to as LOSOM. And the purpose of this effort is to reevaluate and define operations for the Lake Okeechobee regulation schedule that take into account additional infrastructure that will soon be operational. The additional infrastructure will be taken into consideration includes the Herbert Hoover Dike rehabilitation, Kissimmee River Restoration Project, as well as the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan C-43 Basin Storage Reservoir and the C-44 Reservoir and Stormwater Treatment Area. This process has been ongoing, and the schedule is to complete it in 2023 with completion of the repairs to the Herbert Hoover Dike. From the hydrologic studies and modeling perspective, the East Coast Floridan model, which is the model that is used to evaluate the Floridan aquifer system in this region. We've updated that. We'll be running new scenarios for 2019 and 2045 as part of this update. SERP has continued, and not necessarily specific to this region, but significant work north of the lake regarding aquifer storage and recovery. And we do have regional groundwater monitoring networks for both the Surficial and Floridan aquifer system, and those monitoring of those networks have continued over the past 5 years. From And not only regional work, but also our local water users have been busy. And we've supported that with alternative water supply funding for alternative water supply projects. The district has provided $1.7 million in funding support for 4 alternative water supply projects from 2016 to 21. These projects have a total project cost of over 14 million. They'll create 9.5 million gallons a day of additional AWS water supply capacity and almost 15 million gallons a day of reclaimed water and brackish water distribution capacity. From a conservation perspective, the district has provided over $430,000 in funding support for 8 water conservation projects from 2016 to 21. These projects had a total project cost of over 1.2 million. And when completed, these projects will result in an estimated savings of over 1 million gallons a day. And you may recall, saltwater intrusion has always been a threat, to our water supply, and we need to be vigilant to monitoring it. And back in 2009, the district took on initiative of mapping the 250 milligram per liter chloride line, and that we would update that every 5 years. So it's been initiated in 2009. We did an update in 2014, and we just recently completed an update in 2019. And those 3 lines are indicated on the map here, yellow being 2009, green being 2014, and red 2019. And the good thing is the lines are on top of each other. So what that's indicating is that there's very little or no major changes in the past 10 years. Along these lines, and looking at sea level rise and climate change, the district has recently established a resiliency officer position, and that's Dr. Carolina Moran, and her job is to look at resiliency, plan for resiliency, and identify the projects and initiatives that the district needs to do to minimize the impact of any changes in the future. So with that, we'll be willing to answer any questions or comments that you may have.
Thank you, Mark, for the presentation. Let me go over a few housekeeping items before we do that. We have around 37 attendees this morning and a full agenda, so we would like to request that comments be limited to around 3 minutes or so. You will notice on the slide directions on how to raise your hand in Zoom. So if you're participating via Zoom, please use the raise hand feature. If you're participating via your phone, *9 will raise your hand, and *6 mutes and unmutes your phone. When you're called upon, please state your full name and affiliation prior to providing comments and questions. With that, we can begin with questions and comments. It looks like we have one hand raised, Gary Ritter. If you could unmute him, and Gary, you have to unmute yourself as well.
Yep. Good morning, everyone. This is Gary Ritter with the Florida Farm Bureau Federation. I just had a quick question for Mark. Good presentation. You had mentioned some of the projects like the Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual and the Lakeside Ranch stormwater treatment area. Is the Lakeside Ranch stormwater treatment area and that project going on there considered in the upper East Coast water supply planning area, or would that be like in the lower Kissimmee water supply planning area?
Good question, Gary. Hey, and welcome. Thanks for participating again. Gary's been one of our longtime participants in the Upper East Coast, and appreciate you joining us again. I mentioned Lakeside Ranch because it's physically located in the planning area. It's not a water supply project, but more of a water quality project. And the outflow to that does go into Lake Okeechobee. So, you know, from a material standpoint and a water supply perspective, it really doesn't affect water supply in the Upper East Coast. But since it was physically located in the planning area, I thought we should mention it.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, next we have a hand raised from Doug Bournik.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you, Doug.
Okay, good morning. Good morning, Mark.
Welcome.
What I'm going to say is nothing new to you, Mark. You and I have been working on this since we were young men. And as a member of the St. Johns River Water Management District Governing Board and an ex-member of your RAC and Ag Committee, and having been raised down there in the south end of the state, I'm looking at this comment from 30,000 feet. All of Martin and all of St. Lucie County have been plumbed to bludgeon the Indian River Lagoon for over 90 years. All of those two counties drain directly east and into the small Indian River Lagoon. Nothing new there. It's been a death sentence for the lagoon for 90 years. Just too much water too fast, and add in the Lake Okeechobee C-44 discharges. It's amazing that the system has anything left in it, but I'm urging your district to consider a reconnection with the St. John's Water Management District Upper Basin. There's 200,000 acres sitting there that can take another foot or two on top of that 200,000 acre area. That's 200 to 300,000 acre feet of water easily. That part of that goes to tide can be diverted there, reducing the beating that the river lagoon takes on a daily basis. So I'm sitting here as the Upper Basin board member, begging you guys to connect the C-25 to our basin. It's a matter of a few feet. Those on the phone that don't understand it, you can hit a 9-iron from the end of the C-25 canal into the Upper Basin over one levee. It's that close where you could be pumping on a daily basis, moving the water where it's needed and wanted by not only the ag community, but all the cities all the way up to Jacksonville. And it could save the lagoon a terrible beating. So that's my point, Mark. It's nothing new to you. You've listened to me, and I got to say, with a very open mind to this all these years, and I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I love the analogy of it's a 9-iron distance.
It's close. I only hit a 9-iron anymore, about 125 yards. It's that close.
Yeah, and I do want to thank Doug. He's participated since the early 90s, and when we had 2 years of meetings on the first Upper East Coast plan, you attended every one of those, and I hosted a couple of those up at the Indian River Citrus Lake office. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Mm-hmm. All right, I see Mr. Minton's hand is raised. Hey, Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Mark. Thank you for the shout out earlier today, and to Governing Board, Jackie Lippisch, thank you. And good morning, Doug. Glad to hear your voice so early this morning. Wanted to dovetail on Doug's comments. As you know, Mark, we've also recently updated the Regional Water Supply Plan for CFWI, Central Florida Water Initiative, and the potential of being able to restore the more natural flow of water from our region to the upper basin of the St. Johns River and let it flow north the way it would have done, but for our very effective drainage system is an important part of that regional water supply plan as well. So I think it's important that we look at the opportunities to address issues in both our region and other parts of the state that would positively benefit both of them. And there's no need for us to be distributing or disposing of all of this valuable fresh water to our inland river lagoon and then out the inlet if we could keep it in the system and send it north where it would have gone naturally, but for the turnpike in our canal system. Look forward to working with you on yet another version of our water supply plan. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Michael. All right. Any other questions or comments? Please raise your hand. All right, Tom, not seeing any.
I don't see any other hands raised. So let's go ahead and move on. Next on the agenda, we have Nancy Demenstrani, who's our Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan Manager. Nancy, go ahead with your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, my name is Nancy Demenstrani, and I'm the Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan Manager. This morning, I will be presenting general information about the overall plan update process and providing an overview of the 2021 Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan update. Next slide, please. The goal of water supply plans is required by Chapter 373 Florida statutes. This requires a quantification of water supply needs for all existing and future reasonable beneficial uses within the 20-year planning horizon. The level of certainty planning goal is based on meeting those user needs for a 1 in 10-year drought event and to sustain the water resources and natural systems. Next slide, please. There are several water supply plan requirements. The map on the right shows the 5 planning areas located in the South Florida Water Management District, as Mark mentioned earlier. Each of these planning areas have plans that are updated every 5 years and cover a 20-year planning period. Demand estimates and projections for the 20-year planning period are provided for the 6 water use categories established by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and the water management districts. Those 6 water use categories are public supply, domestic self-supply, agriculture, landscape recreational, commercial industrial institutional, and power generation. These plans also look at available water sources, identify which sources have issues, and perform an analysis such as groundwater modeling to determine which sources can provide water to meet the demands for the planning period. Also required in each plan update is a water resource development component, which is the responsibility of the district and includes projects such as hydrogeologic investigations, groundwater monitoring and modeling. An overview of the water supply development projects, which are done by water users such as public supply utilities, are also required in these updates. And finally, the plan updates have a resource protection component, which provides an update on the protection efforts afforded to water resources such as minimum flows and minimum water levels within the planning area. Next slide, please. To be sure the plan reflects the needs of all of our stakeholder groups in the planning area, the district meets with local governments, agricultural interests, public supply utilities, environmental groups, and local communities. Some of the ways for the public to provide information, comments, or feedbacks are through the local forums listed on the slide below. Stakeholder meetings are held to discuss the progress on the plan updates and provide an overview of the plan chapters and appendices. Governing board meetings provide another opportunity to provide comments and concerns. One-on-one meetings, such as meetings with public supply utilities or other stakeholders, are held to collaborate and share information. And finally, a draft plan document will be available for review prior to a final draft being sent to the governing board. Next slide, please. The Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan update process began last December. Today, we are holding our first stakeholder meeting. There will be 2 stakeholder meetings for this plan update. The first is today, and the second one will be in the late summer, early fall. In addition, a technical modeling workshop will be held in July. The stakeholder workshops will provide an overview of the topics that will be included in the plan. Some of them, such as demand estimates and projections and water resource protection, will be covered today. and the rest will be covered in the second workshop. We have already met with public supply utilities and agricultural interests and will continue to meet and collaborate with local entities and other interested parties throughout the process. The draft plan will be presented to the governing board in early fall, and final governing board approval is slated for November of this year. Next slide, please. The northern border of the Upper East Coast planning area is the county line between St. Lucie and Indian River counties, which is also the boundary between St. Johns River and the South Florida Water Management Districts. The southern border of the planning area is the county line between Martin and Palm Beach County. The Upper East Coast planning area, as shown in the purple area on the map, encompasses all of Martin and St. Lucie counties and the northeastern portion of Okeechobee County, and is approximately 1,230 square miles. There are 17 public supply utilities that are considered in this plan. 2 utilities, the town of Jupiter and the village of Tequesta, are located in the lower East Coast, but a portion of their service area extends into the Upper East Coast, so those portions are included also in this plan. This planning area has a major agricultural industry. The majority is located in St. Lucie County, with a fair amount also located in northeastern Okeechobee and western Martin County. Some of the important natural and water resources are the C23, C24, and C25 canals. The C23 canal is located at the Martin and St. Lucie County border. The C24 canal is located in central St. Lucie County, and the C25 is located in northern St. Lucie County. Also, some other important resources in the Upper East Coast planning area are the St. Lucie River and Estuary, the Indian River Lagoon in coastal St. Lucie County, and the North Fork of the Clusahatchee River in southern Martin County. Next slide, please. There are 5 objectives for this water supply plan, which are met in the chapters of the plan update. The objectives from the 2016 water supply plan update were modified for this 2021 update, so we're not starting from scratch. Water supply to meet the demands during a 1 in 10 year drought through 2045 is the primary objective of the plan. We also at the same time need to protect environmental systems and look at ways to improve the efficiency of water use through conservation. And finally, we coordinate as closely as possible with other entities such as local governments to make sure our goals meet their goals and integrate with other water resource initiatives such as the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan. Next slide. The plan consists of 2 documents, one with the chapters and appendices, and the other is a support document that includes things that don't change over time that are relative to all planning areas such as legislative criteria. The 2021 Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan update document consists of 9 chapters and associated appendices in an executive summary. We identified the demand estimates and projections for the 6 water use categories, and we discussed measures and programs for water conservation. There's a chapter on water resource protection efforts in the Upper East Coast. Water source options, issues, and resource analysis are covered, as well as water resource development projects done by the district, such as the Indian River Lagoon South Restoration Project. In addition, the plan lists out water supply development projects, such as reclaimed water line installations that are conducted by water users such as public supply utilities. And finally, we provide future direction for the Upper East Coast water supply. Later in this meeting today, we will provide a summary of the demand estimates and projections, which will be covered by Nathan Kennedy from NES Consulting, as well as resource protection and water resource development projects, which will be covered later by Leslie Watt in the Upper East Coast planning area. To be respectful of your time, we are going to make some of these chapters available early for the public to review and provide comments on. Next slide, please. There are several water source options available to the users in the Upper East Coast. The 2 most widely used traditional sources in the Upper East Coast are surface water bodies such as the C23, C24, and C25 canals, and fresh groundwater from the superficial aquifer system. However, since these sources are limited, there are several alternative sources as shown by the bubbles with the asterisks that are available to meet the additional demands that can't be met by traditional sources. Of these alternative sources, saline groundwater from the deeper Floridan aquifer system is the most widely used in the Upper East Coast planning area. There's also some development of reservoirs that capture excess wet season water flows that would otherwise be lost to tide and storing it in an on-site reservoir for use in the dry season. In addition, reclaimed water use continues to increase in the Upper East Coast area. Next slide, please. It is important to protect and use our water resources at the same time. Although surface water is the main source utilized in the Upper East Coast, its expanded use is heavily limited by resource protections. 3 protection methods implemented in the Upper East Coast are minimum flows and minimum water levels, water reservations, and restricted allocation areas. These all will be covered in detail later in this meeting by Tony Edwards, our expert in this area. To summarize, there are 3 MFLs, 1 water reservation, and several restricted allocation areas in the Upper East Coast. Next slide. If you take the Florida Peninsula and lie it on its side in this area, this cross section is what you would see underlying the ground surface from the west on the left to the east on the right. As stated before, the 2 groundwater sources utilized in the Upper East Coast are the shallow superficial aquifer system and the deeper Floridan aquifer system. In order to get water from these sources, groundwater wells must be drilled into these aquifers. The superficial aquifer system extends from land surface down to approximately 150 feet and is recharged by rainfall at the surface. The upper portion of the Floridan aquifer system, or more commonly known as the Upper Floridan Aquifer, is widely used in the region and occurs at a depth of 700 to 1,000 feet below land surface. The Avon Park portion of the Floridan aquifer system is also used in the Upper East Coast, but to a much lesser degree due to higher salinity. The Floridan aquifer system is fully confined and under pressure in this area, which means it flows naturally at land surface. It also is brackish or saline in most portions of the planning area, so desalination prior to use for public supply or blending with surface water for agriculture or other irrigation is required. The much deeper, lower Floridan aquifer is not widely used in the Upper East Coast for public supply or irrigation purposes due to the high cost of well installation and the high chloride concentrations, which would require more expensive treatment prior to its use. However, beneath it is the boulder zone at a depth of about 3,000 feet that can be used for deep well injection purposes. And finally, aquifer storage and recovery wells, which involves storing water, such as stormwater, fresh groundwater, or reclaimed water that is injected into an aquifer and withdrawn later for use, are beginning to be more used in the Upper East Coast. For example, McCarty Ranch ASR at the City of Port St. Lucie Utility Systems. Next slide. Recharge to the superficial aquifer system is primarily from local rainfall. The superficial aquifer system in the Upper East Coast is not very transmissive, and its productivity is much lower compared to the other aquifer systems in the South Florida Water Management District. The only connection to Lake Okeechobee is the C-44 canal and other regional canals, which provide some recharge locally, but that recharge doesn't extend across the entire planning area. The Floridan aquifer system has expansive recharge areas in 4 states, as shown in the dark blue areas on the map on the right. Most of the recharge for the Floridan aquifer occurs in the north central part of the state. The Floridan aquifer system is much more transmissive and productive in the Upper East Coast than the superficial aquifer system. Next slide, please. Resource evaluations are an important component of water supply planning and determining the availability of sources to meet water needs in the planning area. The use of the Floridan aquifer system is growing in the Upper East Coast due to limitations on surface water and low production rates, and environmental considerations such as wetland impacts for the superficial aquifer system. A minimal increase in superficial aquifer system water use is anticipated through the planning period, and therefore the superficial aquifer system was not modeled. As Mark explained earlier, the East Coast Floridan model has been updated since it was developed in 2016. The model evaluates the impacts on water levels and water quality due to increased dependency on the Floridan aquifer system. Numerous sources of data and information were considered while updating the East Coast Florida model, such as input from planning area stakeholders, analyses and results from the previous water supply plans, local government reporting, water use permits, hydrologic data from monitoring wells, and updated saltwater interface maps. An increase in Floridan aquifer system use is expected from 78.4 to 98.9 million gallons per day. Therefore, updated groundwater modeling is being performed to evaluate the increased 2045 projected demands. Those results will be presented in the technical modeling workshop being held in July. Next slide. There are numerous permitted users of fresh groundwater from the superficial aquifer system in the planning area. Public supply, as shown by the pink dots, landscape and golf course irrigation, as shown by the green dots on the map, are the largest users in the Upper East Coast, especially along the eastern portion of the planning area. Also, there is a fair amount of agriculture users of the superficial aquifer system in the area, as shown by the yellow dots, for either livestock drinking water or tank filling. The superficial aquifer system is widely used for other smaller uses as well in the planning region due to it being easier to treat and less costly to install wells. Next slide. Due to limitations on the amount of surface water and the low productivity of the superficial aquifer system, as well as environmental concerns such as wetland impacts, the Floridan aquifer system is becoming more widely used in the planning area. Public supply utilities located primarily in the eastern portion of the planning area and agriculture located primarily in the northern and western portions of the planning area are the largest users of the Floridan aquifer system in the region. 9 of the 15 supply utilities in the Upper East Coast utilize groundwater from the Floridan aquifer system to meet all or a portion of their demands. The majority of agricultural users rely on groundwater from the Floridan aquifer system as a backup supply for droughts and freeze protection only. Next slide. The Floridan aquifer system is the most widely used alternative source in the planning area. The map on the left shows the location of all public supply treatment facilities with different treatments for the Floridan aquifer system in the Upper East Coast. On the right, the bar chart shows the Floridan aquifer system use in dark blue compared to the superficial aquifer system use in light blue. Up to 2005, the use of the superficial aquifer system was used more in the region by public supply utilities. From 2010 to present, there is a shift where the use of the Floridan aquifer system has increased and is used more than the superficial aquifer. Overall, the use of the Floridan aquifer system for public supply has increased from 20%, or approximately 5.8 million gallons per day in 1999, to 57%, or approximately 26.2 million gallons per day in 2019, for an overall 500% increase. Next slide, please. Reclaimed water is another alternative source used in the Upper East Coast, primarily for landscape and golf course irrigation. The bar graph shown on the left shows that the use of reclaimed water in the Upper East Coast has increased from approximately 5 million gallons per day in 1994 to approximately 8.5 million gallons per day in 2019. The two maps on the left show the locations of the wastewater facilities and associated reclaimed water distribution lines in Martin and St. Lucie County. According to the 2019 Florida Department of Environmental Protection Annual Reuse Report Inventory, the volume of wastewater used is 9 million gallons per day, which equates to 36% of the wastewater that is treated. There is 15 million gallons per day of potentially reusable water that is being disposed of via deep well injection. Reclaimed use continues to be promoted for new developments, and several utilities are expanding their reclaimed facilities to provide alternative water to meet additional demands in the region. Next slide. Now that I've covered the traditional and alternative water sources, I want to finish with some discussion on demand management through water conservation. The use of conservation limits the need of having to expand the use of other sources. It is important to encourage and promote water conservation as much as possible, and all water sources should be used as efficiently as possible by all users in order to reduce water use. In the Upper East Coast, the two largest users are agriculture, followed by public supply. Some ways agricultural users are practicing water conservation is by converting to a more efficient irrigation system, such as micro-irrigation. Many agricultural users in the Upper East Coast are also implementing Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, or more commonly known as FDACS, best management practices to ensure more efficient use of water. Public supply conservation efforts in the Upper East Coast are reflected in the historical per capita use rates, which have shown a 22% decrease from 167 in the year 2000 to an average of 130 for the years 2014 through 2019. And just a little end note, the cheapest gallon of water is the gallon we don't use. Next slide. This concludes my presentation, and we will be happy to address any questions at this time.
Thank you, Nancy. If anybody has questions, raise your hand. Looks like Doug, you've raised your hand. Go ahead and ask your question.
Just to comment on it. on the concept that we're a water poor area, again, because of the canal systems that are 80, 90 years old that move all of the water to tide, it makes us water poor. But when you get 50 to 55 inches of rainfall a year, we are a water rich area, just that valuable resource is moved to tide as quickly as possible from the system we have there. And it can be corrected with a number of major moves. One is the reconnection. We in agriculture, in that slide you have of all of the wells, which is primarily citrus, we don't use that water anymore because of the greening disease that accelerates the use of that water, accelerates greening in citrus because of the bractishness of the water, the TDS of the water. We can only use surface water. The deep Florida aquifer water burns the skirt of the tree. Actually, it's so salty. And it really reduces your production per acre. So most of those wells you see are not being utilized and haven't been utilized since greening was discovered in 2005. And so that's kind of a moot point. The use of ag and all that upper East Coast on the Floridan is minimal. It would have to be keeping your tree alive under an extreme drought that you'd actually use or blend that water with your surface canals. And lastly, for those that are elected officials that I've heard that think that taking the water and moving it into the St. John's is a bad idea because we lose the water. We have two excellent executive directors in Drew Bartlett and Dr. Ann Shortell, and I'm sure they would sign a memorandum of understanding allowing us to bleed the water back from the upper St. John's into the upper East Coast area, replenishing the canal system and putting it at a level that would overcome the current droughts we go through in agriculture. Those canals, as Mark will tell you, the canal system that we rely on for surface water, we're cut off at 14 feet mean sea level every year. We go through a drought because of the misappropriation of our most valuable resource in the state, which is water. Thank you.
Okay, Doug, thank you for your comment. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Nancy? I don't see any hands raised. Okay, I think we can move on to the next presentation. Next on the agenda, we have Dr. Lorenzo Rossi from University of Florida. So go ahead and take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
we can.
All right, great. Yeah, so I've been asked to talk a little bit about the status of the citrus industry, and I picked the Indian River District because it's easier and we have more data available. And I want to start saying thank you to Doug Bournik because he really helped me a lot with the data. So next slide, please. We have a University of Florida research station located in the Indian River, and I'm an assistant professor there. My main research area is on plant root biology, but we work together with our citrus horticulturist, with Dr. Ferrarisi here, and our water specialist, which is Dr. Gutzman here at the station. Next slide, please. As I say, the Indian River District is a little bit bigger compared to your district that we are talking today, but we are known for grapefruit, and the Indian River grapefruit is well known in the entire country and internationally. We have a big orange juice company, which is the Tropicana, and we have one small company, but which is well known, which is Natalie's, and we have the Indian River Citrus Lead, which is Doug Bournik is here, And next slide, please. So what's the situation with the citrus greening? Citrus greening arrived in Florida in 2005. It's a bacteria which is transmitted by a psyllid, so basically a fly. The fly will go on the leaf and while the fly is feeding, will transmit the bacteria inside the leaf, and the bacteria will go into the phloem, will replicate in the roots, and then slowly will clog the vascular system. And right now, the situation with the citrus greening, we have pretty much citrus greening in all the citrus producing county of Florida, as you can see on the map. And we have reported cases in other states, Texas, California, but the weather there, it's a little bit different from our weather. So the replication and of the disease, it's a little bit slower. Next slide, please. So this is what, and this is how an HIV affected grapefruit grove looks like. So as you can see that the plants are small, they don't look happy. And next slide, please. See, this is the symptoms of the leaf, and this is the result of this phloem clogging. So you have this bacteria inside the phloem, and you have an unequal distribution of the nutrients inside the plants that they will show on the leaf. Next slide, please. And of course, that will result in not really healthy looking trees and grapefruit that are reduced in yield. Next slide, please. So talking about data, these are from the Florida citrus statistics. And as you can see, I put basically 100 years of data, and we have the peak of the citrus industry in Florida around the 2000. And then, as you can see, in 2005, we start seeing a sharp decline, both in oranges and grapefruit. So the oranges are the blue one, the grapefruit are the orange one. And there is a big dent in 2004, 2005. That was because of Hurricane Francine and Jean. And we will, if you go to the next slide, I put more information here. So this is specifically about thousands of tons of citrus production in the US. Citrus green was first detected in 2005. And we also have Hurricane Francine and Jean, and then we have Hurricane Irma in 2017. But you can see a steady decline, and in California, unfortunately, it's actually growing in terms of citrus production. Next slide. Fresh citrus availability in the US, as you can see again, a little bit of decline. There is if you see the orange are the oranges and the red line are the grapefruits. And when we talk about grapefruit, you have to think that about 70% of the production of grapefruit is here in the Indian River district. And as you can see, there is a big increase in lemons, limes, and tangerines, which are called specialty citrus crop, because they're, especially lemons and limes, are more tolerant to the disease. Next slide. And also the orange juice sales are decreased. Now, 2020, as we all know, was a little bit different because of the pandemic. So there was a huge peak. There was a lot of interest in the orange juice, but it's going down again. Consumers has changed a little bit of their interest. especially starting 10 years ago, there was a lot of talk about sugars content. A lot of people were moving to less sugar drinks, and that was affect the orange juice sales. Next slide. A number of citrus operations in Florida have declined too. This is from 2002 to 2017. So we're talking about 60–70% decline in number of citrus operation. And if you go to the next slide, you will see that also the number of juice processing facility and packing houses decline as well. Here in the Indian River District, we still have 7 packing houses, but that's a small amount compared to what we used to have like 10 or 15 years ago. Next slide. So talking about Indian River District, I put together data from 2008 to 2020. So this is pretty much what we have. We have a decline in orange and grapefruit, and we are seeing an increase in lemon trees, which are called specialty crop. Not only lemon, there is a little bit of interest tangerine too. That picked up mostly because of Coca-Cola interest. There are growers that have signed contracts with Coca-Cola for lemon trees for flavor. It is interesting because we are seeing trees that are going back to the field. That's important. So we are planting trees. We see more interest. There is a interest in planting grapefruit, particularly the stars are gaining interest. Ruby red, is a little bit declining because it's more sensitive to the disease, but the stars are picking up interest. And next slide. And if you see it, this is a 10-year comparison to 2010 to 2020. You can see we're talking about 81,000 acres on citrus in the Indian River District in 2010, and we are about 33,000 acres as of today. So there's been a decrease in 60% in citrus acreages. Grapefruit in 10 years lost 57% of acreages. Oranges lost 71%. And specialty, we saw an increase on 100%. And again, when I say specialty, I refer to lemon trees, tangerine, and lime. Next slide. So in terms of production, so we talk about acreages. This is production. So in terms of production, we are seeing a decrease in the past 20 years of 85%. Both red grapefruit and white grapefruit. And this is where we are. And this big, the thing here is when we have American Frenchies and Jen. Next slide. Again, with the loss of acreages in citrus, people are thinking about peaches. There's been some interest. Pongamia is a new crop that is gaining some interest in the area. I put the picture here of Pongamia. There is a company called Terviva that is trying to invest in this crop. We have to see. I'm not completely sold on that yet. Lemon trees are seeing an increase in acreages. Next slide. What is interesting here to see, and this is the production by age of the trees. So if you see each line, it refers to trees that are 3–5 years, 6–8 years old, 9–13, 14–23, and 24 years old. What is interesting to see is that in the last 5 years, because of correct nutrient management and because we know more, you can see an increase in the production, especially in the oranges. Of course, not in the first 3-5 years, because they're still young, but when they pick up, compared to where we were 5 years ago, we see that we are increasing the boxes per tree. I can see that for oranges. We are not there with grapefruit yet, and that's why we have big nutrition studies here at the center. We are trying to evaluate different variety and rootstock to see if we can do the same that for oranges with an increased management, with ameliorated management, we can increase the grapefruit production as well. Because with this disease, every box is per tree count. So it's important to better understand. And again, when you talk about grapefruit and oranges, grapefruit are more sensitive to the disease compared to oranges. Next slide. This is a picture of what we had as December 2020. So that's when the report, the Florida Citrus Statistics. So we have around 15,000 acres of grapefruit, 11,800 acres of oranges, 5,590 acres of specialty citrus. And since we're talking about the Indian River region, we have one of the largest citrus processing plants with Tropicana, one of the best mold Jewish plants known globally as Natalie's Jewish Company. We have the world's largest USDA citrus research lab, and we have a UF-IFAS research station, and we have 7 packing houses. So this is a picture of where we are as of today. Next slide. Tom asked me to go and talk a little bit about how to control HLB or what we are doing. As I say, HLB, it's a bacteria that is transmitted by a psyllid. So you can either control the psyllid or the bacteria or both. You can control the psyllid with pesticides, and growers has been doing that. Of course, if you use pesticides, you have an increase in your cost of operation. We have a big study here at the center with citrus under protective screen. So we call it cups and mini cups. So basically you put the big screen, there is a picture later, I will show you. So the psyllid cannot go in there. Dundee citrus, the county growers, they're being put in this big screen. There too, there is another big cups in Volusia County. So there is an interest in these citrus under protective screens. It's laborious, it's expensive, but it's a way to keep the psyllid away. There has been study on reflective mulch. There are studies on cover crops, even like color clay, so to spray the leaves so the psyllid can get distracted. And breeding has been a big thing for controlling the bacterium, so to create tolerant or resistant, which is the final goal to the bacteria. Micronutrients, boron, zinc, and manganese. We have active studies here. There's been interest in antibiotics and GMO, but antibiotics are always challenging because resistance, because residual, and GMO. If you're talking about European market, creating a GMO, we probably not be able to sell the product. Natural compounds. There's been a lot of interest in mulch with oak mulch, oak extracts. And if you go to the next slide, it's a series of pictures of what we are doing and what we have been doing. So pesticides is to control the psyllid. That's a traditional way to go. Of course, you have environmental aspects. Cups and mini cups. This is what I would say. This is greenhouse with citrus that can be big cups or mini cups. Next slide. Then Bob Adair here at the Florida Research Center led the studies on reflective mulch, so the psyllid was not disoriented because of the reflection. And we saw some interesting studies and report. Of course, the sustainability of this operation is always what counts, because it can be expensive and the reflective mulch can deteriorate. Next slide. Cover crops. There are some studies even here on the river. I know some growers that are doing cover crops. The idea is to increase, of course, organic matters in the soil. This is Mr. James, the grower up in the hill. But we have growers on the river that are doing the same. So increasing the organic matter in a more sustainable way, and also increase diversity, so the psyllid may be confused with all this flowering, and you have more natural predation too. So increase the natural enemies that can attack the psyllid. And they were seeing a big production of increase on oranges. But it's a long term. It's not something that happened overnight. You have to build this organic matter. So it will take probably 5-10 years to build your soil health. Next slide. This Dr. Vincent Lake Alfred is spraying colored clays, and he saw some interesting results. There is another study, similar study here at the center, and even at the another commercial grove there, they tried that. Next slide. Micronutrients, we have a study here. The idea is that micronutrient can have a toxic effect on the bacteria, but we need to be careful because we're talking about micronutrients, so small amount. If you give them too much of them, you can kill the trees instead of just killing the bacteria. But boron, zinc, manganese, those are the 3 micronutrients, copper too, that has been studied, and we saw some result. Next slide. Natural compounds. Dr. Shatters, myself, we have been studying the effect of oak. So the idea is that there were some trees, some citrus trees that were growing under oak canopies, and they were looking healthy compared to trees that were not growing under the oak canopy. And we saw some interesting results. We're still working on trying to identify the compound, identify the correct amount of this treatment. And then the COVID hit us pretty hard, and so we were not able to do a lot of lab research in the past year. But we saw some good results. Next slide. And similar to that, since it's still oak, the use of oak mulch and compost has been gaining traction. And this oak mulch, not only for the citrus, for the control of the bacteria, but also for increasing soil health and organic matter in the soil. With our sandy soil, it's always important. Next slide. Ground covers. Growers are trying those to reduce fertilizers, to reduce herbicides and water management, because you can save water and also reduce the use of fertilizer on your row, on your bed. We are on year 3 of this study. We see a reduction in water consumption, which is good, and the trees are looking wealthy as well. Next slide. So basically, there is no cure for HLB yet, but management strategies can help. So cover crop mulching, nutritional programs, mini cups and cups can help in reducing the pressure of the psyllid and keeping your citrus grove productive. I think there is pretty much it. There should be another slide with acknowledgement. yeah, with all the people I've been working with in the past 3 years. And I am ready for all the questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rossi. That was very interesting. Appreciate you sharing the data and information and insights about the challenges of the citrus industry. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Dr. Rossi? Please raise your hand using *9.
Yeah, I think there is a question. Jackie?
Thank you, Doctor. I was just wondering, did it start in Miami or did it start here when the hurricanes came through, Francis and Jean? Because you seem to note it with Francis and Jean. Thank you.
It was first reported in Miami, and I think it was spread in already, and then the Hurricane Jean and Francis arrived, and then it was spread all over the states. That's what we thought. We don't really have an exact location where it started, but the first county, and again, there is a difference between the psyllid and the bacteria. So, because there were reports of the bacteria, I think, was here before the psyllid, and then the psyllid was the vector. And with the hurricane, it spread pretty much all over the state.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and we have a hand raised by Doug Bournik.
Hey, Doug. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good morning. And good morning, Jackie. I wanted to follow up a little bit on your question. The psyllid was first detected in a Delray Beach nursery, which is the vector. It's not the disease, but it is the vector. It was discovered in 2002, 2003, that growing season. And we were alerted that the ability for greening to spread was in the United States for the first time, but the disease wasn't detected until 2005 down in Homestead, Florida. And then because of the ability of the vector, the psyllid, to easily fly from grove to grove to grove, within a matter of about 2 years, it spread from Homestead to Ocala. It was a very quick movement of this disease from coast to coast, from the Keys to the northern part of the state.
So tragic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
This is Mark Elsner. Dr. Rossi, in the way of funding, I've been hearing on the news that there's still funding supporting the research.
There is. So there are different agencies. So there are federal money from USDA. That's specifically for HLB. There is the CRDF, is the Citrus Research and Development Foundation, which is the growers here in Florida basically tax themselves, and those tax money return to the CRDF and goes into research and other services. For the state of Florida, there is a similar organization in California, which is called CRB, Citrus Research Board. There are some money from the Florida Department of Agriculture as well. That's pretty much usually the kind of money that we apply to. So USDA, CRDF, and FDOCs.
Okay. Thank you. Great presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. Anyone else? Okay. Just by way of housekeeping, we'll have one more presentation and then a 10-minute break before we start up again. So next on the agenda, we have Nathan Kennedy from NES Consultant. Please go ahead, Nathan.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Nathan Kennedy, and I help the team at the district with this water supply plan as an independent consultant. But prior to that, I served as the lead economist within the Water Supply Bureau, and it's been a pleasure working with my former colleagues on this water supply plan. Next slide, please. So I'll be going over the demands for the Upper East Coast and the projections. We use 6 water supply or water use categories for the demands. We use public supply, domestic self-supply, agriculture, commercial, industrial, and institutional. The 5th category is landscape and recreational, and the 6th is power generation. These 6 categories are provided to us by the FDEP. They were developed in coordination with the South Florida Water Management District and the other regional water management districts in Florida. So wherever you go in the state, this is what we use for the demand categories. Next slide, please. Now, the basis for many of the categories, either directly or indirectly, is the underlying population and population growth in the region. And so I want to first go over kind of the process that we use to develop our population projections for the Upper East Coast. Now, the first step in our population projections is to define the current and then the future service area boundaries. We develop maps that show where utilities currently serve, and in coordination with them, where they are anticipated to serve in 2045, the end of our planning horizon. So the next step is to calculate our baseline population estimates. And we do that with information provided by the US Census and the Bureau of Economic and Business Research, also known as BEBR, within the University of Florida. They provide the county level and also municipal population estimates. The next step is to using our maps and also information from BEBR within the University of Florida. We calculate our future populations from 2020 to 2045, and with BEBR publishes for each county several different versions of future population. They call them the low, the medium, and the high. We're directed by Florida statute to use the medium projection, but we also have discretion to use, as our other planning entities within the state, to use an alternative projection. And in the case of St. Lucie County, their transportation planning organization formally adopted the use of the BEBR high projection for their planning efforts. And that decision trickles down into other planning endeavors in the county and leading to their comprehensive plan and the information therein. So we try to stay in line with the local planning efforts to try to align our populations with theirs. And so we elected to use the BEBR high projection for St. Lucie County. Martin County remains the BEBR medium projection. Now, what does that mean in terms of the actual numbers? For St. Lucie County, we had a population in 2019 of called 309,000 permanent residents. The BEBR median projection said by 2045, we'd see 419,400 permanent residents. Compare that to the BEBR high, which says 492,800 permanent residents. a growth of 35% over that time period of 25 years compared to 59% with the Beaver High. The last step, and maybe the most important, is to circle back with our stakeholders and other interested parties and to review our projections with them, and to make sure that they match reality as best as possible. Next slide, please. So I spoke about those service area maps. Here you can see the maps for Martin County. On your left, you see the map for 2019, where the utilities in Martin County currently serve. And on the right, you see the 2045 map. Not too much change here. Some notable growth with Indiantown Company in Western Martin County. But other than that, some growth, but fairly minimal. Next slide. So through the process that I described, here are results for Martin County. And you can see the 2019 population as well as the 2045. Again, this is based on the Beaver medium projection. In that case, we see a growth from 158,598 permanent residents to 193,000 permanent residents in 2045. You can see that the breakdown by utility. The largest utility in the county currently and in 2045 we project is Martin County Utilities. We also see the domestic self-supply total at the bottom there, and I haven't discussed this in length yet, but that's basically every permanent resident that's utilizing their own private well for potable water supply. Individuals that are not served by a utility within the county. Next slide. So here we see the same comparison of maps for St. Lucie County. We have 2019 on the left, 2045 on the right. In this case, what stands out is a larger growth shown for the utilities, primarily St. Lucie County utilities. You can see some notable growth that is projected in the next 25 or so years. Next slide, please. And here are those same results for St. Lucie County. Again, you can see that total growth that I noted earlier for the county. And we can also see the largest utility, both today and tomorrow, is projected to be the Port St. Lucie Utility Systems Department. In 2045, we project that they'll be serving over 322,000 permanent residents. We can also see the domestic self-supply at the bottom, and you'll note a larger number than Martin County, but some decline projected as those utility service areas expand. Next slide, please. So here's our taking that population and putting it into water supply terms, and we do that by looking at trends in the last 5 years. We develop per capita use rates, and we use those rates to project forward with that growing population what the water demands will be in the future. And so you can see here a comparison of a stacked bar chart of the 2019 public supply, we abbreviated PS, and the domestic self-supply, abbreviated DSS, for Martin in the blue shades, St. Lucie in the green shades. We didn't discuss Okeechobee very much. We capture a small portion of Okeechobee County. It's very rural, less than 1,000 people in this rural area that we capture inside of the Upper East Coast Planning Region. But you can see some notable growth in the demands over time. What jumps out is the growth, the projected growth in the St. Lucie County public supply portion. Next slide, please. So that covers the first two categories, public supply and domestic self-supply. Let's talk about agriculture, the largest demand category in the upper East Coast. So we break this this category down farther by crop categories. What you can see here is an array of the crop categories that we use for our projections. These crop categories are provided to us by the Florida FDACS, the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. So we are in line with the way they define things as well. Just you can see, we break down vegetables. Citrus has its own category. Sugarcane. There's an array of categories. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So we use a range of information to help guide us develop agricultural projections, and definitely in the last Upper East Coast Plan update, we leaned on this array of sources more so, but we still call upon a range of sources, economic and agricultural, to help guide our decision-making process when it comes to the agricultural category. Next slide, please. There's a statute that helps to guide how we do things for this category. And one change in statute and the way that we do things in Florida that has occurred much so since the last plan is the development of the FSED annual report, and you'll see a copy of that report on the left hand side of your screen. FSED stands for the FSED is an abbreviation for the Florida Statewide Agricultural Irrigation Demand Report. FSED, I'm going to call it. And so in 2013, FDACS was called upon through statute to develop this report. This report provides acreage estimates and projections for the crop categories I just identified. They also developed with a statewide model demands for the crop categories we just discussed. And this report is published annually. Next slide, please. So in statute as well, we are required to consider the demands provided by FDACS through its FSED report in our water supply planning efforts. If we have discretion to deviate from those estimates and projections in the FSED report, but any deviation we have to justify and present the FDACS demands alongside of an alternative set of demands in our water supply plan. Next slide, please. So as we move forward to the meat of the heart of the matter here, the results, let's just kind of break things down into two components that kind of speak to the process that we use. So we have two components to these demands. We have the irrigated acreages, and we have a water demand models that take those acreages and convert them into water volume. And so for the irrigated acreages, we have in the past we've used our land use map products developed by the district's GIS department. But we're fortunate in this case now with the FSED report being available to use their projections, and they update them every year. They're focused on irrigated agricultural lands, and we are fortunate enough to work closely with FDACS and the FSED team to refine their maps that show that the estimate of current irrigated areas. And we use things like information from a regulatory database. We pour over for many hours aerial imagery to kind of show where things are being irrigated. So we take the FSED product and we put extra effort to try to refine it to make it as accurate as possible. Next slide, please. So here's an image of that FSED/FDACS map that we provided a very small role in helping to refine. And And you can see the distribution of irrigated agricultural lands across the Upper East Coast. The brighter colors, rather than the beige or light brown, we'll call it, represent the irrigated areas for different crops. What might stick out is the citrus in the north and kind of the peach color. And down south, you can see, just for example, some of the lighter green representing some notable sugarcane areas. Our goal in developing demands and everything we do is to identify and utilize the best source of information that we available, and we feel that the FSED map and data for irrigated area is the best available, and we use that to develop our agricultural demands. Next slide, please. And here we can just see a bar chart, group bar chart, 2019 on the left, 2045 on the right, of those acreages, and you can see over time, FSED projects, FDACS and FSED projects a reduction in the acreages of most agricultural crops in the Upper East Coast. The projection side of things for the acreages is driven by a number of factors, including recent trends. There's a trend analysis goes on, as well as there's other economic considerations that are factored into their projection model. But these are the FSED acreages over time. Next slide, please. Or sorry, next slide, please. So that kind of covers the first component of the ag demands, the acres, the maps, if you will, current and future. And so for the model side of things, taking those acres and putting them into water volume, we have two different models to consider. In the past, for past water supply plans, we have used the AFSERS model, and we, again, like I mentioned before, FSED has their own model. These models are different. So the AFSERS model was originally developed at the University of Florida. It's more of a agro-environmental model that considers soil type, different environmental considerations, and of course crop type. That's the AFSERS model. The FSED model is built on reported water use data from all water management districts. There's still some environmental variables in there, but it's a little bit more a limited set that's used in the FSED model. And the FSED model, the demands for a given crop will vary based on economic variables in their model. So they're different. We had a choice to make as far as what we're going to use to take these acres and put them into water demands. Next slide, please. So for this plan, we decided to use the AFSERS model with the FSED FDACS acres to develop our demands. Several reasons for this decision. The first being that the AFSERS model, the use of it provides consistency with the way we've done things in the past. It also is consistent with the way we do water supply modeling. Some of the other hydrogeological models that we utilize AFSERS. Some of the other larger hydrogeological models that we use for other efforts in the district use AFSERS as well. Again, that consistency is important to us. And a last reason, there are some unique aspects of agricultural production in the UC that in the Upper East Coast that may not be captured as well with the FSED model. Again, they use data from all over the state to develop their water supply model. And it's a good model, but there are some examples in the Upper East Coast that may be underrepresented in that broader statewide effort. Next slide, please. So here we can see the results here, and also a comparison. So here are those water demands produced by AFSERS. And on the far left, you'll see our results from the 2016 plan update, and that represents our 2020 projection published in that update. In the middle, you see the FSED demand estimates, and you see the AFSERS for this water supply plan update on the far right. And you can see that they're different. I mean, the 2016 plan update for 2020, there are different acreages built into that, but we can still see a notable difference. But the FSED model in the middle and the AFSERS model on the right are based on the same acreages. So, and we can see that they indeed produce different results. The AFSERS model, we can see the biggest demand component is sugarcane, and that's a result of the acreage therein, but also the way that they irrigate sugarcane with the flood seepage. I believe is the primary irrigation technique. Next slide, please. And so that I covered the crops. There's also some other somewhat minor, relatively minor components of the agricultural demands. There's also livestock and aquaculture. They're very minimal compared to the crop demands. But just some notes about agriculture. There's approximately 92,000 head of cattle in the Upper East Coast, about 6% of the state herd. We use the FDAX, FSED estimates for livestock. We take them directly, and they say it's about 1.9 million gallons per day. And they also say there's no predicted change in that relatively small demand. Just a small personal note, if you forgive me, you might be saying to yourself, wow, that's a really cute calf. And we're fortunate enough to have a very small farm up in Clusahatchee. And that's our first calf that was born on Tuesday. Her name is Priya, and we're really excited about her. So anyway, sorry about that. Next slide, please. Here are the results with a breakdown for crops, livestock, and aquaculture. Again, using our AFSERS model with the FDAX acreages. And as you saw before, that the acres were projected to decline. The irrigated acres were projected to decline for all the crop categories, and we can see with that a projected decline in the water demands. We currently estimate we use about 174 million gallons per day for the ag category, and by 2045, it should be about 131 million gallons per day. Next slide, please. All right, moving on. We're almost done. We'll move on to the commercial, industrial, and institutional water supply category. This category captures things like mining operations, other large industrial operations, packing houses for citrus would fit in this category as well. The demands are relatively small compared to the ag, for example, but they are notable. In Martin County, we show an increase in demands. We project a slight increase or an increase in demands for St. Lucie County as well. And by 2045, 5.73 million gallons per day projected for this category. Next slide, please. Moving on to the landscape and recreational category. Next slide. Now this category, within this category, we capture irrigation use for golf courses, for other landscaped areas like parks, sports fields, municipal areas managed by municipalities with the irrigation, and common areas within residential developments. For this category, we use the water use data to help project it, and you can see a projected increase. And this is built primarily on the population growth. We break it down. We break out the golf component of this category, and we treat it separately because we think it's important to project it separately. And we don't project any new growth in golf courses over the planning horizon. There may be a golf course here and there, but really we think a flat line approach to golf kind of reflects the recent trends in that sector. And so for the rest of this category, we we ride the population growth, and you can see that growth does result in a growth from 32 million gallons per day for the region in 2019 to a little over 40.63 million gallons per day in 2045. Next slide, please. Last slide, last category is power generation. And this obviously captures the power generating facilities in the region. In Martin County, we have the Martin County Power Plant in Indiantown that utilizes water from the C-44 canal and a small amount of superficial aquifer system groundwater. In St. Lucie County, we have the Treasure Coast Energy Center in Fort Pierce. And we also have the St. Lucie Nuclear Power Plant that uses potable city water, a very small amount to run the facility, but they also use a large amount of seawater that's not directly captured in these demands, but they use seawater for cooling. And so for the category, we work closely with FP&L in describing their facilities and the growth of those facilities, the changes in those facilities over time. And through that consultation and evaluation, we project a slight decrease in the water demands for power generation over the planning horizon. Next slide, please. So here we see it all kind of put together. We can see that those 6 categories that I opened up with and the demands for each, both the current and the future in 2045. Again, as I noted, the largest category in the region is agriculture. It is predicted to decline, as we said, but it will still remain the dominant component of water demand in the region. The second largest category, both today and tomorrow, is public supply. The public utilities the utilities that serve the population with potable water throughout the region, and we project a growth in that as well. As you can see, you see the other categories, but overall for the planning region, primarily due to the projected fall in agricultural demands, we see a slight decline in demands from 291.09 million gallons per day in 2019 to 283.81 million gallons per day in 2045. Next slide, please. And here you can see a graphic, a comparison of the 2016 plan update. And this is a 2040 number, right? So this is the as far as the 2016 plan went to 2040, and it's kind of holding it up to the 2045 projection for this plan update on the right-hand side. And so we can see some differences here. I mean, the agriculture is notable. I think there's been some decline in the acres that we've seen since the last update, but there's also some little change in methodology there as well. That plays into this, and we can see some growth in the public supply with our projections between the two plans, and the power generation. Was a little change in our methodology, perhaps since the last plan, but you can see where we're currently at. Next slide, please. Well, that does it for me. If you have any questions or comments, I welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nathan, and congratulations on the new calf.
Sorry about that. I had to do it.
That's fine. Does anybody have any questions for Nathan about demand projections? *9 to raise your hand if you're on the phone, or use the raise hand feature. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. Oh, okay, we do have one. And it's a call in on the phone with the last 4 digits of 6814.
Yes, this is Drew Martin with the Sierra Club. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I have a question. When you look at demand from utilities, do you take into account if people used solar, rooftop solar on their houses, and rather than relying on power plants, how much would that reduce the demand for water? Have you looked at that?
No, we just focus on the water use values, which don't directly consider, what source of power is used to move that water. So we do not consider that.
And do you consider on crops alternating different types of crops and how that would impact water usage if, for instance, a farmer has changed the type of crops? I know that wouldn't be possible in things like citrus, but in other types of crops, would that make a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so each crop has specific demands at the field level and specific ways in which they can be irrigated. And so for each acre of land that we have on those maps that I showed, we have obviously the crop type, which has certain requirements that are built into these models. But we also have irrigation types as well built in. So some types of irrigation uses less water than others, obviously, and we do factor that in. We have a conservation element to our plan that perhaps discuss that in more detail. And I know the FSED report also has a section on conservation as well that explores some of the gains some of the conservation that could be achieved through some of those technology choices.
And I just have one last question, and that is, if people utilize less lawns for landscaping, how much water would that save?
I don't know specifically, but obviously an acre that's not watered is a gallon not used is a gallon saved. So yeah, I don't have a specific number on that, but obviously that would result in a reduction in demands.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Nathan? Okay, I'm not seeing any raised hands. So let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. According to my clock, it's 2 minutes before 11. Oh, just changed. 1 minute before 11. So if we could start up again at 9 minutes after 11 o'clock, that would be good. Thank you for listening. We'll start up again in about 1 more minute. Thank you. Okay, it looks like it's 11:09. That was a 10-minute break. Thank you for your patience. I know this is kind of a marathon presentation. We needed to have a break in there somewhere. And next on the agenda is Tony Edwards, and she's going to talk about our water resource protection tools. So go ahead and take it away, Tony.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, this is Tony Edwards. I'm a senior scientist with the Coastal Ecosystems section at the district. And today I'll be giving you a brief overview of 3 protection tools that we use throughout the district to protect water supplies. Next slide. And these are minimum flows and minimum water levels, or MFLs, water reservations, and restricted allocation areas, or RAAs. And all 3 of these are adopted by rule in the Florida Administrative Code. They're also considered in review of consumptive use permit applications, along with a few other measures and tools, as you can see here. Next slide. The district gets its authority to develop and adopt MFLs from Chapter 373 of the Florida statutes. MFLs are adopted in Rule 40E8 of the Florida Administrative Code. And in 40E8, there's a definition of an MFL, which is the point at which further withdrawals will cause significant harm to the water resources or ecology of an area. Significant harm is also defined in the rule as a temporary loss of water resource functions that takes more than 2 years to recover, but is less severe than serious harm. Serious harm is also defined in the rule. And MFLs may be adopted for both surface waters and groundwaters. Next slide. Now, when we adopt an MFL, we simultaneously adopt either a prevention or recovery strategy for the MFL water body. If the MFL water body is meeting the MFL at the time of adoption, but it's not expected to meet it in the next 20 years, a prevention strategy is adopted for it. And the prevention strategy is intended to prevent the existing flow or level from dropping below the MFL. If the MFL water body is not meeting the MFL at the time of adoption, we adopt a recovery strategy for it. And the recovery strategy is intended to bring the flow or level up to the MFL as soon as practicable. Next slide. Now, to date, the district has adopted 9 MFLs district-wide. 5 have prevention strategies and 4 have recovery strategies. And collectively, they cover over 6 million acres. 3 of these, shown in red, are located within the Upper East Coast Planning Area, or UEC, shown in purple on the diagram to the left. These are MFLs for the St. Lucie Estuary, Lake Okeechobee, and the Northwest Fork of the Clusahatchee River. Next slide. This is just a close-up to give you a better idea of where these 3 are. As you can see, the MFL for the St. Lucie Estuary is the only one which is wholly within the UEC. The other 2 also extend into the lower East Coast water supply planning area. Next slide. And for this reason, those 2, the MFL for the Northwest Fork of the Loxahatchee River and the MFL for Lake Okeechobee, are covered in the lower East Coast water supply plan. They are both adopted as well into Rule 40E8, and they both have recovery strategies. Next slide. So today I'm going to concentrate on the St. Lucie Estuary MFL. Now this MFL water body has a rather extensive definition in the rule. However, it's generally the area shown in red in the diagram on the left. It includes the main stem of the river from the intercoastal waterway to its confluence with the North and South Forks. It also includes the North Fork up to the C-24 canal, as well as the South Fork down to the C-44 canal. The MFL criterion is a minimum mean monthly flow, it's a lot of M's, of 28 cubic feet per second at the Gordy Road structure, which you can see up top within the yellow oval. When this minimum flow is not met for 2 consecutive months during a 365-day period for 2 consecutive years, an MFL is considered to have occurred. Next slide. The St. Lucie Estuary was meeting the MFL at the time of adoption. Therefore, a prevention strategy was adopted for it. And it's composed of 3 parts, 3 components. The first component is discharges from the North Fork are managed within the operational protocols of the 10 Mile Creek project, which you can see the general location of the project on the left, and on the right are is a close-up to show you the components of the project. Next slide. The second component are that flow targets are maintained consistent with the SERP performance requirements of the Indian River Lagoon South project, which you can see on the right. Next slide. The third component is ongoing research and monitoring in the North and South Forks of the St. Lucie River. Now, the diagram on the right is from this year's South Florida Environmental Report. And as you can see, in the North and South Forks, we have ongoing oyster substrate monitoring as well as water quality monitoring. Next. The second category of water resource protection tool I'd like to talk about are water reservations. And again, we get our authority to develop and adopt water reservations from Chapter 373 of the Florida statutes. Water reservations are adopted in Rule 40E10 of the Florida Administrative Code. A water reservation reserves a quantity of water for the protection of fish and wildlife or public health and safety. The water that's reserved cannot be used for consumptive uses. And where water must be protected for SERP projects prior to their construction, a water reservation can be used for that purpose as well. They can also be used as parts of MFL recovery and prevention strategies, and they can be adopted for both surface waters and groundwaters. Next. Now, some things to note that water reservations are not intended to do or do not do. Unreserved water is not protected by a water reservation. They do not prevent the use of unreserved water or water that's already been allocated under consumptive use permit. They don't establish operating regimes, and they're not intended to drought-proof a natural system or proliferate wildlife. Next. The district's adopted 7 water reservations to date. They cover over 356,000 acres. And one of them, shown in red for the North Fork of the St. Lucie River, is located in the UEC. Next. This water reservation was adopted for the protection of fish and wildlife. All of the district's water reservations adopted to date are for the protection of fish and wildlife. Next slide. Now, if you recall the diagram I showed you earlier of the St. Lucie Estuary, it started at the intercoastal waterway and went up the main stem, down the South Fork, and up the North Fork to the C-24 canal. The water reservation here for the North Fork of the St. Lucie River begins at the C-24 and extends up to the Gordy Road structure. This is a prospective water reservation, meaning that the water reserved under the rule will be available for fish and wildlife upon formal determination by the district governing board that any one or all of the SERP C23, C24 North and South Reservoir and Stormwater Treatment Area project components are constructed and operational. The water reservation criterion is a mean monthly flow of 130 cubic feet per second over the Gordy Road structure from November 1st through May 31st of each year. Next. The last category of resource protection tool I will cover are RAAs. RAAs, or restricted allocation areas, are defined and described in section 3.2.1 of the Applicant's Handbook for Water Use Permit Applications within the South Florida Water Management District, which we usually simply refer to as the Applicant's Handbook. And this document is incorporated by reference in Rule 40E2 of the Florida Administrative Code. And by virtue of that, RAAs are considered adopted by rule. An RAA covers an area or a region as opposed to an individual water body or group of water bodies. And within that region, water allocations are restricted to existing some sort of a baseline use, which I will go over in more detail. Additional water allocations and new water allocations are restricted. They're implemented in areas where water for projected needs is insufficient or is projected to be insufficient in the future. They protect natural systems and future restoration projects such as SERP projects, and they can be designated as parts of MFL recovery or prevention strategies. Next slide. The district has adopted 7 RAAs to date. They cover over 4 million acres, and 4 of them are located in the UEC. These are for the C23, 24, 25 canal system, the North Palm Beach County Loxahatchee River watershed water bodies, pumps on Floridan wells in Martin and St. Lucie counties, and Lake Okeechobee and the Lake Okeechobee service area. Next. This is just a close-up to give you a better idea of where they're located. The cross-hatching indicates the area over which Floridan wells are regulated under the RAA. The pink area are the C23, 24, 25 canal system. The orange areas are the North Palm Beach County Loxahatchee River watershed water bodies. And the blue area, of course, is Lake Okeechobee and the Lake Okeechobee service area. You'll notice south of the southern border of the UEC, there's a small area where the orange areas and the blue areas overlap, and that's an area where we have double RAA protections. Next. The RAA criteria for the C23, 24, 25 canal system, the RAA prohibits additional surface water allocations from those canals or canals directly connected to them above existing allocations. The RAA also prohibits an increase in surface water pump capacity. For the North Palm Beach County Loxahatchee River watershed water bodies, water allocations are limited to a base condition, which is described in the applicant's handbook. For Floridan wells in Martin and St. Lucie counties, that RAA prohibits pumps on flowing Floridan aquifer wells in Martin and St. Lucie counties, except under the conditions that are described in the applicant's handbook. And for Lake Okeechobee and the Lake Okeechobee service area, water allocations are limited to historical condition water uses that occurred from April 1st of 2001 to January 1st of 2008. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take some questions.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Tony? Please raise your hand. Okay, we have one. Mr. Minton, please go ahead. I think you're still muted, sir.
Is that better?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, I didn't see your pop-up about unmuting. Tony, thank you for the presentation. My question is, it's been 20 years of our waiting on the CERP projects to be built in the Upper East Coast, and now that it looks like C23, 24 reservoirs are going to be built, how have we factored in the impact of this additional volume of water that's going to be through, in essence, the North St. Lucie Water Control District? I know you referenced, taking it into account when determining the flow for the MFL, but is there more to it that we need to be aware of, since with the discharge coming out of the STA is relying on the infrastructure of that 298 district?
I think that question probably can be better answered by Leslie Waugh, who'll be giving her presentation next. She might be able to give you more information about that. I don't have that information at hand, but I can get it for you and send it to you if you'd like to send me an email with your contact.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions or comments for Tony? Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Is it in order for me to ask Mr. Minton a question in light of Ms. Edwards' presentation based on his question or not?
Sure, if you want to, go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Minton, I've heard a few things, but I'd like to learn more. And I think this might be a good place to try to understand for everybody and the people who end up watching this in the future. Can you please explain to me the North St. Lucie County Control District as a 298, I imagine, and what your concerns are with the C23, C24 STA and Reservoir getting built, because it's so exciting to think those things will be built and it is moving along. So can you just share with me, please, sir?
Certainly, I'd be glad to. I presume I'm still unmuted.
You are.
Good. So the 298 district, which was in existence, I think, even before the CNSF project was built, it covers a large portion of northern and western St. Lucie County for water control and discharge. And its primary discharge point is, as was shown in the materials there, right about where the 10 Mile Creek Water Preserve area is constructed. When C3 and C24 were redesigned, the STA for it is located east of the C24 connection between C25 and C23. And so when that was redesigned, my understanding is that a significant portion of the discharge coming from the C23, C24 reservoirs that gets cleansed through the STA will now be routed through North St. Lucie Control District's infrastructure and then out the Gordy Road structure. And it just seems like that's a lot more water than it was originally designed to take, since we're bringing water in from outside that watershed. And so the question is, have we done everything we need to do to be a good steward and to be a neighbor to that 298 district to make sure that we're not overburdening their infrastructure to accommodate this additional water?
Thank you for explaining that. And I know that there have been communications and I'll learn more. Thank you.
Certainly. And any help I can be, again, there's 20 years of institutional knowledge of trying to get to this point. But we're now at the point where these plans are becoming firmed up and, construction is going to be undertaken. So these are all good questions that you want to address before you actually start turning dirt.
Absolutely. Thank you for your experience.
Glad to help.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions or comments for Tony? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I think we can move on to our next speaker, Leslie Waugh, the Section Administrator for Ecosystems Restoration. Thank you, Leslie.
Yes, good morning. How are you? Just doing a mic check. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. So good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Leslie Waugh, and I'm the Section Administrator for the Ecosystem Restoration Planning and Project Management section. So next slide, please. And today, I just want to provide some updates on some of the restoration projects going on around the district. And so we'll take a trip around Lake Okeechobee, and I'll touch on some key projects, and then we'll focus on projects that are happening within the Upper East Coast planning area. Next slide. So there are a number of restoration projects either operating, under construction, or planned throughout the district. And this map is a great resource that shows all those projects under the different restoration categories. So it's not just CERT projects, there's restoration strategies and Everglades construction projects, Northern Everglades and Estuaries programs. So there's a lot of other projects instead of just CERP. So this map actually captures all of those restoration projects throughout our district. So this is a great resource. If you want to be able to access this map, it is available to the public. You just use that link that's shown. But my presentation will mainly focus on some CERT projects, but I'll also provide an update on the Lakeside Ranch STA, which is the Northern Everglades and Estuary. Next slide. So starting on the south side of Lake Okeechobee, we have the Central Everglades Planning Project, or CEP, which is underway. And once constructed, the project will divert lake discharges away from the northern estuaries, including the St. Lucie and Clusahatchee, and increase flows south to the Everglades. So some key highlights I just wanted to mention about the project. The project is divided into 4 phases. So currently the CEP EAA phase, which includes the EAA reservoir and stormwater treatment area. The district just signed the project partnership agreement just on Earth Day on April 22nd, and that's an agreement with the Corps. And once that's executed, the Corps will then be able to start construction on the project. So the district is currently constructing the stormwater treatment area, and the reservoir is currently under design by the Corps, and we anticipate a contract award for a portion of that project later this year. So they will get started on construction, hopefully in just a few months. So just a couple of highlights for the projects further south for the CEP project. For the north phase, the district is the lead for design and construction of that project, or that phase of the project, and we are currently designing and expect to start construction in 2022. And for CEP South, the district completed the S333 North spillway, and that will help move more water towards Everglades National Park and Northeast Shark River Slough. And we are currently removing a remnant portion of the Old Tammy Trail, and that is currently a barrier to sheet flow. So once that's removed, we'll have more natural sheet flow into Everglades National Park. And then the Corps is constructing currently the L67A culverts, and the Corps also has the lead on design and construction of the remaining features of the CEP South phase. So that's just some highlights from CEP. So next slide. So next we'll go to the west side of the lake. Project there is the Clusahatchee, or one of the projects there, the Clusahatchee River West Basin Storage Reservoir. It's also more commonly known as the C43 Reservoir. So with the storage capacity of 170,000 acre feet, the purpose of the project of the reservoir is to capture water from local basin runoff and also from Lake Okeechobee regulatory releases, and it'll capture that water in the wet season and then provide essential flows to the Clusahatchee Estuary during the dry season. So this project is well into construction and it's expected to be complete in 2024. So moving along to the north side of the lake, we have the Lake Okeechobee Watershed Restoration Project. And this project includes water storage and wetland restoration north of the lake. In this project, there is a draft PIR, but it is still pending a final chief's report and congressional authorization. But the district is moving out on the aquifer storage and recovery well component of the project, or ASR is what we call it for short. So we are initiating work, we're conducting site evaluations, we're working on some continuous cores on some of the sites, and then we're also initiating some exploratory testing and well drilling. And for this project in particular, the district, the district is also developing a science plan, and that will outline studies to address some uncertainties during the ASR implementation. All right, so now we're on the east side of the lake and the projects within the Upper East Coast planning area. So the Indian River Lagoon South project is a SERP project that is located within Martin and St. Lucie counties. The project includes structural components that are storage reservoirs and stormwater treatment areas that will capture, store, and treat local basin runoff. And it will benefit the St. Lucie Estuary and the southern portion of the Indian River Lagoon. And then the project also includes a natural lands component to restore habitat within the watershed. So the main structural components, I just wanted to mention them. There's the C44 reservoir and STA that's on the Martin County. And so that project's currently under construction. I'll go into more detail about that project. The C23 and C24 South and North Reservoir and stormwater treatment areas. That project's currently in design and expected to start construction later this year. So I'll go into more detail about that. And then the C25 Reservoir and STA. And I'll just talk to that one. I don't have an individual slide. So that one we are currently working on some site evaluations. So next slide, please. So one feature of the Indian River Lagoon South project is the C44 reservoir and stormwater treatment area. So this project's been under construction, but we're almost done. The C44 project, so just some specifications, includes a 3,400 acre reservoir that is designed to hold 50,600 acre feet of water. And so that's water captured from the C44 basin runoff. And then that water will be stored in the reservoir and then delivered to the stormwater treatment area, which is 6,300 acres. And that will treat the water before returning it back to the C44 canal. So next slide. It's a little more detail, or at least some pictures. You can see the reservoir. So the Corps constructed the reservoir and it will be completed this year. The Corps plans to start doing a test fill of the reservoir this fall. And the project will be in an operational testing and monitoring period, probably for a year or so before we begin routine operations. So the picture on the top of the slide is a panoramic view of the reservoir. So you can see on both sides, you see the embankment and it's looking into the middle of the reservoir. So you can see it's actually so big, you can't even see the other side of the embankment. And then the structure that's kind of in the middle of the picture on the right and the bottom of like the floor of the reservoir, that's where the water will inflow into the reservoir. So the bottom left is the pump station that pumps into the reservoir. So that's the upstream side of the inflow pump station. So you can see where the inflow canal kind of curves into the pump station and water will then be pumped into the reservoir. And then the middle picture is the STA hydration pump station that the district installed in late 2019 to start adding water to the stormwater treatment area ahead of the reservoir being completed so that we could start vegetation grow in the STA. And then the bottom picture on the right is the S404 spillway when it was under construction. And that's the discharge structure for the STA that goes back to the C44 canal. So again, just finishing up construction there and should start test filling later this year. So the next slide is, this is a picture of the stormwater treatment area. So the stormwater treatment area portion of the C44 was constructed by the district. So the treatment cells are complete, and we are currently hydrating the cells to allow for, like I said, for the vegetation to grow in. So this is a great view of the STA. This is kind of the middle portion of the STA, about halfway up, looking from west to east. And the canal in the middle is the distribution canal that distributes the water to the individual cells. So the next component of the IRL South project is the C23, C24 reservoirs and stormwater treatment areas that will capture and treat basin runoff. So the South Reservoir is approximately 3,500 acres and has a 60,000 acre foot storage capacity. And the North Reservoir is approximately 2,000 acres and has a 30,000 acre foot storage capacity. And then the STA component of the project is about 2,000 acres, and it will treat the water stored in those reservoirs. So all the C23 and 24 features will be designed and constructed by the Army Corps. And the first feature to be constructed is the stormwater treatment area. So they are currently finalizing the design for the STA. It should be complete in May. And we do expect the construction contract to be awarded later this year. And then that will be followed by the North Reservoir and then the South Reservoir. And like I mentioned before, the final treatment or storage and treatment component of our 25 reservoir and STA, the district has the lead on design and construction of that feature. And we're currently evaluating locations for those features, just like the final locations for those features. Next slide. So another project within the Upper East Coast planning area that I wanted to mention is the Lakeside Ranch Stormwater Treatment Area. And I know Mark mentioned this project earlier, but I just wanted to provide a slide on it so you can see a diagram of what the project actually looks like. It was constructed by the district, and it's under the Northern Everglades and Estuaries program. It's located in Martin County, adjacent to Lake Okeechobee. And the purpose of the project is to reduce phosphorus loads to Lake Okeechobee by treating basin runoff before the water enters the lake. And it does consist of two phases. So the first phase was the North STA, which was completed in 2013. And then the second phase was the Southern STA. And then the phase two also included the S191A pump station. So the STA is complete, and the S191 pump station will be complete in just, I believe in May is when it's expected to be complete. So then that project will be entirely constructed. Next slide. So another CERT project that was just authorized in the Water Resources Development Act of 2020 is the Clusahatchee River Watershed project. And the purpose of that project is to restore the federally designated National Wild and Scenic Northwest Fork of the Clusahatchee River. And I wanted to mention it because there are a few projects or features of the projects that are located in Martin County. But since majority of the projects are located in Palm Beach County, this project, as far as it relates to the water supply planning, it's fully described in the Lower East Coast Water Supply Plan. Next slide. And these are just our ongoing CERT planning projects. So like I mentioned before, we still have the Lake Okeechobee Watershed Restoration projects that's in still in the planning phase, although we are moving out on the ASR well component. We also have the Western Everglades Restoration project that's currently in planning. And then the Biscayne Bay Southeastern Everglades Ecosystem Restoration project, also known as BBSEER. Slide. And then finally, I just wanted to mention the integrated delivery schedule, or the IDS. So this is a helpful tool. This is our roadmap for restoration projects. It outlines the schedule for the design and construction of our restoration projects, and it does include other helpful information. And the district and the Corps, we work together to update the IDS annually, and which is through a public process. And the schedule is available online at the link shown. So if you want to learn more about it, we recently did have a district governing board workshop that we held just this month on April 7th, where we talked about the IDS in detail. So if you want to learn more about it, you can always go back and reference that workshop. But the IDS is a good resource, just like the project map that I showed earlier in the presentation, and those are available to the public. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of those and had the links to those resources. And with that, we can take some questions.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. I see a couple of hands raised. Mr. Mitten, your hand is raised for a question.
Yes, when we were first looking at the C43 reservoir, and I guess probably C44 would be one to be considered as well, but more C43, there was a lot of discussion because of the rock nature, the amount of rock that's under the old berry groves, as to whether those facilities would need to be lined to actually hold water. And I know we did a number of test cells. What was the final resolution on that? And in light of some of the issues we've had with other water impoundments in the state, should we revisit that if we're not lining it?
Good questions. And I would say I am not familiar with the details.
Hey, Leslie, this is Beth. So
Okay,
if I can answer the question,
Sure.
and I'm not a geotechnical engineer. The Corps is in the process of doing the design on the North Reservoir and beginning to pull together a scope of work on the South Reservoir. And there is a significant amount of geotechnical and seepage modeling work that's going to be done with that. Thus far, there has not been any indication that they will need to be lined. C44 is definitely not lined, but it does have a very significant seepage control system. So I hope that answers your question, Mr. Mitten.
What was the final resolution on C43 though, with all the rock over there? Were they able to successfully do that, design it without lining it?
Yeah, I do not know the answer on C43. I haven't heard anything about it being lined, but I'm not directly involved in the project, so I do not know.
Yeah, this is Leslie. I have not heard of it being lined either, and but we can find that out for you. And I do know for the EAA, for example, same thing. We do a lot of geotechnical evaluations and seepage modeling, and I know for that project in particular, there will be cutoff walls used to help with the seepage, but not linings. But C43, I'm not familiar with that specific detail, but we can find that out for you.
One of the big issues was there's so much rock as to whether it was going to be able to hold the water or not. And in light of some of the more public things that have happened in the last year, maintaining public confidence in these structures is very, very important. So it's always going to be cheaper on the front end to make this decision and build it in than it is to go back and retrofit. So I just wanted to see if that was under further consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good question.
Okay, and I see Gary Ritter, you have your hand raised.
Yes, hey, thank you very much. Gary Ritter with the Florida Farm Bureau Federation. Good presentation, Leslie. I had two questions. The first one is, in one of your slides, it suggests that there will be some C23 water going in, actually into the C44 basin. And if that's the case, how does that, how would that impact water supply on the Upper East Coast? Because sometimes under the right conditions, the C-44 basin will discharge back into Lake Okeechobee.
Right. So are you specifically talking about?
Yeah, good move right up to C-23 to C-44. There you go.
The interconnect.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Leslie, you want me to answer that one as
Sure,
well?
go ahead. You got more detail.
Okay. Hi, Gary. How are you?
Good, Beth. How are you?
Good. So the interconnect was a component of the IRL plan, and it will take water from the C-23 above certain stages, and when water is flowing over the S97 structure. So it is water that will be discharged to tide, and so it's not a loss to the C-23 basin because it would have been discharged to tide anyway. And then with respect to, then it will be collected by the C-44 reservoir and moved through the C-44 system back to the C-44 canal, where it can either be discharged over the S-80 structure to the IRL South or to the Indian River Lagoon, or back to Lake Okeechobee. It is considered a precursor to the SEP project. And I think those operational details are still, they're still going to be handled through LOSM and elsewhere. But it is intended to go either back to the estuary via the South Fork or potentially back to the lake.
Okay, so then I'm assuming then that'll be factored in under those conditions as the project moves forward in the Upper East Coast water supply plan. Then, when water will go back to Lake Okeechobee and when it'll go south then.
Yeah, and that's a water supply group question, but I would assume, yes, that it would have to be accounted for.
Yeah. The other question I had was on the Lakeside Ranch STA. You also have owned Brady Ranch. Is that going to be at some point in time incorporated into that system?
Yeah, again, I want to make sure I get the right information for you because that's under the Northern Everglades and Estuaries program.
Mm-hmm.
It's not under my group, so I'd have to get that information for you. But yeah, I know it's the lands immediately to the right of the Lakeside Ranch.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Across the, yes, yeah. Okay, all right. Thank you, Leslie.
Okay.
Jackie, is your hand raised for a new question or comment, or was that from before?
It's a new comment. Thank you. This is Jackie Thurlow-Lippisch. I just wanted to say for the record, since these are recorded especially, that I'm under the impression, and I believe it was at our board meeting when the board approved the interconnect canal, that the intention was never to send that water to the St. Lucie estuary. Perhaps clarification by executive staff would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions for Leslie? All right, I'm not seeing any. I think at this point we could move to our last presentation. Nancy, our plan manager, is going to cover the next steps. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to make this as brief and painless as possible. Next slide. We're going to just discuss the next steps in the plan process. We're going to continue coordination with utilities, agricultural operations, other agencies and stakeholders throughout the process. We are having, as we mentioned previously, a technical groundwater modeling workshop in July, and that will present some of the groundwater model simulations. We're going to stay up to date with the progress of regional projects. As you guys just heard, a lot of these projects have some construction and some completion dates in 2021. So we will try to cover those as much as we can. And then the next stakeholder meeting will be in the late summer, early fall of 2021. And we will be sending out an email again to give you notice for that. And you'll have to register again for it. And it will be held, we're pretty sure, Zoom again. Next slide. And if you need water supply plan information, you can go to www.sfwmd.gov/UEC plan. And then, like I said, the workshop announcements will be sent out via email. And that pretty much concludes our presentations. If you have any questions, you can contact me, of course, Tom, our section leader. Oh, sorry, Mark, I didn't say next slide. Sorry. I'm on the last slide. Sorry about that. That was my bad.
No.
Sorry. And then, of course, you can contact Mark Elsner. He's our bureau chief. And Chad Britchka is our utilities coordinator with if there are any utility questions, he's our specialist in that area. And that's all I have for today.
Yep, this is Mark. I'd just like to thank all of our presenters. I thought the presentations were very well done and extremely informative. And just want to thank you for the time that you've put into that and presenting today.
Okay, so one last opportunity for public comment today. Any questions or comments? Okay, a phone number with the last 4 digits, 6814.
Yes, this is Drew Martin with the Sierra Club. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So just my general comment is that I'm concerned that we are still looking at not having enough water, cyclically. Obviously during wet times we do have enough, but we will have dry times. It appears with climate change we're going to have more severe droughts, and I hope that we can do more to promote water conservation, and in particular maintaining tree canopy, which keeps the ground moist and holds more water, I think would be beneficial, as well as reducing lawns and landscaping requirements, which is really just wasted water. People could use different types of landscaping. So I hope you will take those into consideration as you move forward with your plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Minton, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to compliment everyone on the presentations for our first meeting on the update of the water supply plan, and ask that we be able to get a copy of this slide presentation so that we'll be able to share it with others who may not have been able to join us.
Yes, sir. The presentations are posted on our webpage right now, and they can be accessed by the public. And we can send those out if you can't find them. We can certainly send it directly to you if you need that.
Well done.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Jackie, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank all the presenters and all the speakers. And it's so good to be able to talk like this, because it's through communication that we address our situations. And so thank you for letting me be part.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Okay, now with that, again, thank you to everyone for our presenters, panelists, governing board member, and everyone who joined us and participated today. As a reminder, in a few days following the workshop, the presentations, the workshop recording will be made available on the district's website. And thank you again, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon. That concludes our workshop.